Wow, wow, how am I doing today? Well, first of all, this is my quarantine look, and this is my quarantine look on a day where Bernie Sanders suspends his presidential campaign. And so my look is reflecting how I feel, which is pretty damn rotten, actually. For those who don't know, out there, Progressive Democrats of America, we were the organization that began the draft Bernie Sanders for president campaign back in 2013.
This is the draft Bernie campaign I support.
Yeah, run Bernie run. We launched it in 2013. I wasn't the executive director then. I was rank and file, PDA at the time, and certainly supported it from the rank and file position I was in. That PDA should set out to draft Bernie Sanders in 2013, and of course, the one condition for PDA was that he run as a Democrat. So we were the instrumental organization in launching basically what followed, which is the 2016 Sanders campaign inside the Democratic Party and the 2020 campaign. And Bernie acknowledges this about PDA. PDA was a very prominent progressive organization in the period from 2004 when it was founded, really in that decade, building up progressive politics inside the Democratic Party, which were very marginalized in that era, in the Bush-Cheney era. Big influence in California and a number of states around the country. And the thing, though, is, of course, PDA was very, very associated with its founding executive director, Tim Carpenter, who was still alive in 2013. Of course, he's the man behind the decision to have PDA run the Run Bernie Run campaign, call on him. He lived in Massachusetts. He understood that Elizabeth Warren was unlikely to run. And that's, I think, the reason PDA separated out from other organizations, and including even going against Bernie Sanders' own wishes that Elizabeth Warren run. I think Tim really understood that Elizabeth Warren wasn't going to run against Hillary Clinton. And the only reason she wasn't saying that unequivocally is it was still 2 years out from the race, and something could happen. A Clinton scandal could blow up, or God forbid, Hillary's health could have gone bad. So it was just leaving the window open. But short of that, it was going to take someone else to challenge from the left, and we drafted Bernie. So we started this thing off, and it's a sad day for us, a sad day for the world, I think, the whole damn world. I do really believe that all that's going on in the world right now, from COVID-19 through the climate emergency, through our imbalanced economy, the most powerful institution in the world that can set out to help us rectify these issues is not just the federal government, but who's in charge of the executive branch of the federal government of the United States of America. And, we can do a lot, tons locally. We can do a lot at the state level. There's all sorts of organizations we can work with and activism we can be involved with. But we're the progressive left, a real progressive left, to win the presidency of the United States. That would have been transformative. And in terms of achieving the transformative change that progressives want to see and that the world really needs, Bernie Sanders brought us closer to achieving that than any of us ever thought possible in 2013, or really up until the Sanders campaign, that a just unbridled progressive would get this close and bring us this close to capturing the nomination in 2016. And then for 1 week this year, in the very end of the month of February, Bernie Sanders was the presumptive front runner with the best line on the nomination. And we really thought it was possible. So it's been a really tough 6 weeks, however long it's been since the South Carolina primary, 5.5 weeks. And then it's been, I can't even keep track of time there. We're very well done. But then
it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
For the record,
it was a rough day.
It wasn't that long ago. I think we've kind of forgotten how it was like less than a month ago that this all started. How quickly this has progressed in a number.
A little bit of a, one of the things I always thought at the time, and of course even today I've gone through it again, what happened between the Nevada caucuses in South Carolina. So much of this does hinge on South Carolina. We all probably have heard many people try to analyze why it is that the Democrats in South Carolina, majority of whom are African American, have for the second race in a row really buried the Bernie Sanders campaign under a huge defeat. And what happened in Nevada before that, I actually don't know how much the party would have unified behind Biden in South Carolina, all the way across the board, if he hadn't actually taken second in Nevada. And while it was a distant second to Bernie, he actually did much better than the other Democratic rivals. So in many respects, it still was Nevada, Harry Reid, that revived Joe Biden and leads us to the point we're at right now. And so
Well,
there's so much to look at. Yeah.
We also had some internal issues. Let's not kid ourselves that also track back to Harry Reid, because some of these staffers that were part of the problems we've been seeing about pushing him to drop out all came from Harry Reid's pack.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have a couple of issues there that need to be really discussed.
Well, this is, I mean, again, yeah, I mean, you know more about that kind of world than I do, Don, but it's a thing where it's true that a lot of the people, there's a lot of recycling going on within the political class. And, you know, one of the things that was very conspicuous about this particular election cycle, and people will look at, is, you know, what did it say to us about Elizabeth Warren that so much of her campaign was made up of people who had previously been in, you know, the sort of Clinton world, and that level of like the professional political class, and how did that influence her campaign, its relationship to the Sanders campaign? All of these things were significant. But then inside Bernie's campaign, yeah, you make a good point though. Again, I don't know the details like you do.
Yeah, I know it gets a little dicey. We're not going to go. I'll save you the trouble. We'll have great time to discuss and dissect this. Plenty of time, apparently. Not like anywhere to be. So, but the big thing though that we're talking about right now is, well, you said you made this great point about how close we were to achieving this platform that we talked about, right? And I think that we need to kind of like transform our mindset on this. And tell me what you think about this, because we just had this stimulus package go through that, you know, of course, it's a huge corporate handout, which you would expect from America, but it also has these two provisions in it that actually help normal people. There's also an additional provision going in that Trump has mandated out of this bill that covers every treatment during the crisis. They're not unclear on whether or not it's a COVID treatment or if you break your arm, if they'll cover it too. No one knows. You're uninsured, you're pretty much covered right now. And so it's like Medicare for all those that need it, which I'm surprised that we haven't used that term. But anyways, these things are happening. And I do feel like Bernie has moved us to this point where the football's on the field and it's starting to move in all these ways. And I feel like we need to be thinking about how we can keep those balls moving, how we can take this. Trump accidentally did this. He didn't he's like, was humanitarian for a moment. No, he just realized it had to happen and he just did it. And we need to run with that. We need to make sure it's permanent. We need to make sure it expands. It's the same thing with the stimulus packages. We need to make sure they expand and keep going. And I feel like Bernie is in a great position to do that as senator, and we're still his leverage, right?
Yeah, we are. You know, I want to talk a little bit about Medicare for all, Trump and Biden, which is just, you know, my mind has not really arrived at accepting that this is now Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, you know, in all likelihood, and that's it. I mean, obviously, we are in one of the more remarkable historical phases of my life and American history. There's been nothing like this. The unemployment rate, the public health crisis of the COVID-19 crisis. I wrote an article that was posted yesterday, which was called "Stay in the Race." Bernie, America needs you now more than ever. It really flew all over the place and tons of people read it. I went to bed believing, yay, I contributed to keeping Bernie in the race. I woke up and that wasn't the case, which is tragic. Okay, in it I say that Medicare for all, in this context, the context of COVID-19, it's not a winning political issue. It is a political landslide issue. It is Tommy Douglas winning the national poll as the most popular and greatest Canadian of all time political moment. Okay, if whoever is the nominee of the Democratic Party were to adopt Medicare for all, this is my opinion, in the November election against Trump, who doesn't, the Democrat would win in a landslide, 60-40 landslide. Right now, the American public understands like they've never understood. Now think about where Medicare for all is right now in the political polls. Nationally, it's sitting at about 55-56% support. Now imagine if the Democratic nominee supports it, the MSNBC and CNN politicians accept that given all the crisis, there's not going to be that much more disruption caused by the disappearance of the health insurance industry, that given all the flux that's going on in the markets and so on, that corporate capitalism will adjust for the disappearance of these actuarial financialized institutions. And so in other words, MSNBC and CNN start promoting Medicare for all, I believe the public support for it would fly to 75%. Okay, the media, professional media class were not opposing it. Now, by any measure in terms of social welfare, human welfare, if you don't support it right now, you know, Hamilton Nolan wrote an article in these times says, if you don't support Medicare for all now, you're a Republican, right? Okay, Joe Biden is a Republican. Joe Biden is a political conservative at this hour of our history. Okay, let me ask you this. What do you think, Don? What does your instinct tell you? Joe Biden goes into the debates not supporting Medicare for all. The moderator asks, Medicare for all has 60%, you know, popularity after how many months of the COVID-19 crisis have passed, right? Why do you not support it? Who's more likely at that moment to say I support it, Joe Biden or Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think that
right, and then Trump wins. He wins.
I know. I'm going to answer your question with another question.
Yeah.
What do Democrats do when Trump adopts Medicare for all?
There we go. Thank
Biden
you.
won't?
I know. Yeah, what a disaster. So, given all that, we have to. Okay. Here's what I just wrote to I got asked to quote by the San Francisco Chronicle, who probably won't use my quote. What do I think does Biden have to do to have the Bernie supporters back him? Oh, the guy just responded. Here we go on television.
I love the look everyone makes in their face when they're typing. I've recently figured out what my look at the camera face is, and I got to do something about that.
I plan on using this, and here's what he asked. Here's what I said. My full quote was, "No one has a crystal ball, but." Again, the question is what would bring Bernie supporters to back Biden enthusiastically? No one has a crystal ball, but realistically, given the COVID-19 crisis, I think it's fair to assume that the movement for Medicare for all will be a central rallying cry among progressives in the coming weeks and months. If Biden wants to win overwhelming support from the Sanders base in the party, it's pretty clear how he can secure that support, endorse Medicare for all, and to do it without equivocation. Of course, PDA and all the other progressive organizations will support Biden over Trump, but neither us nor Bernie himself can magically deliver the progressive vote. I do think that would be achieved by endorsing Medicare for all. And that is, the last sentence is what he's including in the quote.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. And I think that this is what I try to explain to people, because it's like, if you ever actually go to my post where I'm in support of Bernie Sanders, I'm not actually telling people to go vote for Bernie. I'm asking people to go volunteer for Bernie. On the assumption they're going to vote for him already. So I never ask anyone to vote for Bernie. I mean, my neighbors, you know, obviously, when you're canvassing or phone banking, that's different. I mean, like on my Facebook, because they should be going for volunteers. And it's the same thing. It works kind of reverse engineer on that, is that I can't make people, there's two ways to look at this. I can't get Bernie people to volunteer for Biden. I wouldn't even try to be so bad. And I don't see Biden supporters letting them be led by me, a former Bernie guy, in the role that I fulfill in a campaign. Like, I don't see me jumping over to Biden and be like, come on, team, we'll go do this. And then being like, yeah, let's listen to this burner. Like, I don't see that happening. So anyway you look at it, there's this situation where they're like, you have to do, and it's already started, the demanding, oh, you're just going to get more Trump. And I'm like, you are straight up abusive when you do this stuff. It's too fast. It's just too fast. It's not time. Like, it's different when I'm like not giving people time to mourn, because I'm like, look, are we collecting delegates or not? Yes, we're collecting delegates. Then nothing has changed. That's my opinion. Nothing has changed.
Oh, you know, I don't see it that way, but
I think that's my take.
Well, PDA is going to look into what we can do legally to campaign for the Sanders campaign winning delegates in every state where there's contests coming up, and to message that. We need to get to a level and win as many delegates as possible. It'd be nifty if we won a majority.
Yeah, someone was like, it wouldn't even matter if he showed up with 2,000. And I'm like, if he shows up with 1991, I'm pretty sure it changes a few things.
I think so too. And of course, the thing about a suspended campaign, I think that does leave in place the easy turn on switch in case something crazy happens with Biden. But, you know, we're going to try to facilitate basically a campaign to win as many delegates as possible for the Bernie Sanders campaign for the progressives to impact not only the platform, but to impact the rules of the party going forward and the size of the progressive bloc within the DNC going forward, Democratic National Committee. And so, you know, and obviously Sanders, it's horrible. He suspended his campaign today. He didn't win. But, you know, Bernie Sanders did rout the other candidates who ran, all those people we remember up on those stages back a few months ago. And then he really, you know, crushed Biden in a few of those races, but then Biden was brought back from the dead.
You know, in that email, though, in that email he sent out today, I don't know if you've seen it, but you should look at it.
Biden's or Bernie's?
Bernie's emails. Who needs that? Bernie's email.
Well, it's interesting. The Biden one, he talks about Bernie for 4 paragraphs, and then he disappears him, and it goes into hollow platitudes. Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh, but it's so classic. It's just exactly 2016 over again. It is no, in Bernie's thing. What does he talk about that he says it's so he's so crucial? I was just making the point. He makes this just really good point about how he has won we have won the ideological debate. And I feel like Americans are actually hearing how important these policies were, because it would have saved their great-grandmother's lives. It would have saved, and people are dying right now who didn't even die of COVID. They're dying because there are no doctors to treat them for heart attacks. They're dying for basic stuff. They're dying at home because they're being triaged in advance. We're not even ever going to really know the true statistics on what our situation is.
Right.
And if we had the policies Bernie's been fighting for the whole time in place, then we would have, a South Korea situation, not a 6 Italy situation.
Well, I mean, I think Italy, you know, obviously Biden made the point from the debate stage about Italy having single payer. I think, yes, the public health system that Bernie envisions would have been efficient in the ways that South Korea has been efficient. I think that, you know, what happened in Italy was distinct to Italy, distinct to Northern Italy. And also just, you know, nobody really thought it was there then when it was.
Yeah, there's the long incubation rate, and we're doing a lot of stuff on COVID-19.
Well, I mean, I think the focus was on East Asia at the time, right. And then it appeared in Northern Italy, and how it appeared is debated. But I do know from my experience in Northern Italy, there's a significant exchange between Chinese capital and Italian capital, Chinese workers, et cetera, in Northern Italy. Well, Italy has such an old population. They need immigration. Very racist over there. The politics.
We're actually finding out that we're seeing cases actually starting in like late November. So like it's like going back way further. It's been a slow burn. Like it's been basically like a fuse burning underground, which they teach us in Boy Scouts when you do campfires. Roots can catch fire. It's very much like roots caught fire and exploded. Well, we talk about this all the time. It's terrible. But how is PDA adjusting what it does to the outbreak that we're dealing with right now? How are you?
To COVID-19? Well, I mean, first of all, it's been a period of intense hyperactivity because, again, all these kind of extreme measures have been part of the stimulus packages, especially the third one, and into the fourth one, extreme both in terms of, well, not extreme, sane in terms of the progressive components that have been included, and they're very weak compared to what they should be, and then you know, I got very involved in trying to alert the public to what was going on in terms of the Fed window that was opened up, in terms of the 425 billion that turns into 4.25 trillion with a 10-to-1 ratio overseen by Steve Mnuchin. And, you know, this is really significant because, you know, if this thing is something that we come out of, and while everybody's wounded, all the segments across society are wounded, and we come out of the COVID-19 virus, and basically corporate America, big corporate America has been insulated by this fund, and we have to go pretty far deep into this crisis to wear out that money. The monopolization that's going to occur, and not only that, the political hand these institutions will have is so strong. And then, of course, across the board, there's so many issues that we're fighting, from the post office to the nurses getting the PPEs that they need. So many issues that we're just trying to make sure that as much of the public as possible and all of our elected officials understand what needs to be done, what needs to be supported. So we've been very active in that context, and we go right back into it next week with the prospect of Congress returning on the 20th. And we're already preparing for that. Student debt cancellation is something we'll be advocating for big time in the next package. Yes, a bunch of issues across the board.
It seems like I'd really like to see essential workers get like if your job is labeled essential, you should have a huge minimum wage increase. I'm saying like $25 an hour plus hazard. And the thing is, if you're considered an essential worker, I don't care if the job gets subsidy by the Fed with all these trillions of dollars getting thrown around. I don't care how that actually functions if the government pays for the whole thing, but these people deserve that money. They should be getting, $25 an hour when it's not a disaster because their job is considered essential. Like,
right. Right, no, absolutely, that's fantastic. Much more money has to go to states, by the way, states and local governments. Right. Than was in the last one. That's essential. They're obviously in charge of things, massively so at the local level.
Especially with the PPE, when they're all betting against each other, or whatever it is. It's the auction. It's crazy. We're gonna do an interview with some people that are involved with that. It's totally nuts. If you don't know, the states are basically being forced to auction off PPE against each other, and then after they win, the Fed is coming in and hijacking those loads to take to the national stockpile and then potentially selling those overseas because this is just totally upside down world right now.
And then Earl Blumenauer has a good bill about getting the emergency measures in place for vote by mail for November.
Yeah, we need vote by mail bad. Yeah. Real bad. Now, what do you think about Republicans getting wiped out? I mean, this is like vote by mail if it goes everywhere, but what if Republicans or more Republicans not voting than we realize too? I mean, how does that end up? I guess we'll really find out.
Yeah, I suppose, who knows? It's America, it's crazy. I mean, what we just went through, let's also to revert back to the Democratic primary season. This was insane, and it's insane. And, I do not get involved in what people would dismiss as, overly conspiratorial thinking. But this is a god-awful mess of a democratic system or a non-democratic or pseudo-democratic electoral system we have from the Iowa crap all the way forward, and how much of it do I think it was subtextually motivated by the need to have Bernie Sanders wounded and then defeated? A whole heck of a lot of it.
Oh, we can actually take apart each individual state and discuss what they did in each state. The only state that's clean is New Hampshire. New Hampshire's the only state with no blood on their hands. Like, I'm not even kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have the appetite for it. It's,
No, don't worry. We're not going to do it right now. We don't have time for that. But is there anything specifically, because we do need to wrap up this interview. It's been a real pleasure having you on, Alan. I'm hoping you will come back and discuss more of these issues as they evolve. But is there anything specific you want to tell people? I'm trying to give this hopeful message because I feel like as long as we're fighting for delegates, we can deliver COVID relief and we can deliver hope to people. And as long as those tools are available, there's something we can do.
Well, yeah, no, okay. Let me actually give you a few volleys here. We put out a press release, and it starts with, first of all, that Bernie Sanders is the transformative politician of our time. He's just a monumental figure in American history. He raised a popular and necessary politics back into play in America. Okay, that's what he's done. And we are going to fight for his agenda going forward on every front that we can, electing progressive representatives, continuing to bring these forwards and not letting any of it slide. PDA is fully committed to that. And so many of the organizations that have grown up in support of the Sanders movement are fully committed, and we're coordinated with those organizations. We'll have a big group of organizations meeting tomorrow. We formed a coalition called People Power for Bernie. It's now expanded up to about 15, and they're really the large progressive non-unions. I mean, we're in coordination with many of the progressive unions, of course, with the nurses on down the line. But these are the civil society progressive organizations, and we're going to commit to fighting for the agenda that Bernie Sanders has brought forward and made known to the American people, that we understand the American people's support. So here's the thing, though. So your point exactly. Bernie Sanders, as such, is not like any other politician in the country. And if, in any way, shape, or form, one of two things happens: Biden stumbles. Yes, PDA will always be looking for a moment to revive the Sanders campaign, if at all possible. Okay, and two, there's Biden stumbling, and then there's the world gone crazier than crazy. I mean, we are sitting on a situation where the unemployment rate and the capacity of our society and our economy as it's been organized to contend with the crisis in front of us is, I see no evidence that the political class is prepared to deal with the, let's say even we come out of this in a few months and COVID-19 somehow is not a second wave, third wave threat, okay? How do we absorb the unemployment? It is now at Great Depression levels already, okay? The only way that we know in the toolbox of modern politics and society to address this is along a Rooseveltian line. Bernie Sanders is the leading Rooseveltian politician in the country. When the public recognizes that the political class cannot address this, okay? First of all, don't get me wrong, every aspect of the American constitutional Republican democratic system must be defended. We must have elections in November, elections in 2 years. Our culture and society cannot absorb or digest anything, I think, of a revolutionary nature right now. With the amount of weapons that exist in this society, that is a formula for pure chaos and disaster. So if it becomes apparent anytime before November that, and anytime in the next month, that kind of incapacity of the political class and the political system to adequately address this, to provide the kind of support that a federal government can provide in the context of a new Great Depression, Bernie Sanders' campaign can come back. And we all should be aware of those moments. We have no idea where the world is going to be in 2 weeks, let alone 4 weeks or 6 weeks, or by the time of the convention or by November. It's a very dynamic political situation. And I do think that the Sanders campaign has made its mark in everyone's imagination as the most benign political movement of our time. And we can't forget that. And it'll be in our minds in that respect in the months going forward.
I do want to point out that when we talk about revolutionary, we mean a social movement for all that wants radical change. So when we talk about revolutionary social movement, if you look up social movement and you go to the Wikipedia page, you have this little graph with different types of social movements. And when you are a revolutionary social movement, it means that you want radical change and you want radical change for all, which is kind of ironic that Bernie runs a revolutionary social movement and says, these are not radical ideas, but he wants to achieve them in a radical way. And so that is what I think people mean when we say that. And I think that we've really lost sight, because I think people get scared by the revolutionary idea. When you talk, especially you talk to Black people specifically, having been to the South a bunch and had meetings and discussed it, they're very nervous by the concept of revolution and shaking it up, as you discussed it just now. So yeah, that is a thing.
Sure.
Yeah, that is a thing that needs to be considered and brought to it. So I think we're wrapped up, Alan. I gotta say, this has been really a great interview. You really brought some really great points. I hope people are going to listen to them and take them to heart.
I'm sorry too. I mean, it is like, I do feel like we took a bad blow today, and I'm a little dazed by it. So yeah.
But we're moving, we're planning, we're taking action, we're still going for delegates. And I think that is the critical, we're still achieving the platform. This was always about that. And we still have a long time till the convention. I'm at least trying to coax people, if you're gonna Dem exit, at least wait until the convention, because this year, literally anything could happen.
Right, absolutely. That's the case.
They could nominate Daffy Duck. We don't know. I think they might be actually already. We just needed some.
And also, don't get me wrong. We'll work, however, just to temper the enthusiasm of radicals who are listening in and maybe loving what we've been saying in the last few minutes. We will also try, and with everything we can, to get as much progressive policy out of the Biden campaign, out of the Democratic Party as possible. Am I confident that, and I could go into my experiences with the establishment political class of the Democratic Party, am I confident that we'd really get much out of them? I'm going to let that just hang in the air for a moment, but we'll push to get as much.
That's the spirit, Alan. Thank you so much. I mean, you guys are Progressive Democrats of America. So when I brought up Dem Exit, I knew I wasn't talking about your organization. So thank you.
PDAmerica.org. Thank you.
Yeah. Wait. It was his PDA.org. What is it again?
PD America. So PDAmerica.org.
Yeah. PDAmerica.org. You should really check them out. They have a lot of really great stuff going on. Alan, just hang on 1 second. But we are done with this interview. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone, if you haven't seen our other videos, feel free to check them out. Totally ignore my dry cough. I'm sure it's nothing. Anyways, I'm Don Ford. This has been Progressive Insider. Thank you very much.